Hello, anyone who's watching this. I'm going to go over what's happened in the last couple of days and what's going to be happening over the next few weeks because it looks quite good, to be honest. It's worth noting that all the snow at the moment is really saturated and we're in a bit of a thaw. Throughout Friday, the freezing level rose to just above the summits. It was drizzling at 1,000 meters. It's even warmer today and tomorrow into Monday as well. So it's not going to be the most pleasant climbing conditions and walking conditions, but you could still do things, definitely, that's for sure. It's not worth complaining about. There's still a lot of snow around. It might just be that the rock isn't beautifully rimed and the snow is going to be quite slushy and not particularly useful in many places. It doesn't look like this at the moment. The weather's not this nice. This was yesterday's blog from Cairngorm. It was slightly cooler over there. It's the west coast that's warming slightly more, but hopefully that should lead to some really good conditions once it goes colder again. It's slightly thawing on the summits of Cairngorm as well. So on the summit of Anik Moor, you can see that the temperatures have just gone above freezing. So this is 1,100 meters, and we're literally just 1 or 2 degrees above freezing with some precipitation as well. So that's going to be saturating the snowpack. But it's not like the freezing level is way, way above the summits. It's just gone hovering around zero now. And again, we'll have some overnight freezes as well. So some really good cycles at the moment. Lots of stuff being logged. I'm not going to go too much into detail in here, but you can have a quick read if you like. Again, there's not much point reading into this because conditions are going to change quite a lot over the next few days. And what we've got at the moment is just a little bit of a southwesterly wind coming off a European high that's building, and it's bringing some precipitation over the west coast, especially today and tomorrow, and some slightly warmer winds. But the freezing level isn't going crazy high because there's lots of cold air behind this low pressure system. But once this moves through from Wednesday, the freezing level drops quite significantly as the westerly winds come back. And the most significant thing over the next few days is this area of high pressure just beneath us. Now this is the boundary of the tropospheric polar vortex, and it's where the colder air is sitting. So you may think it's a high pressure coming from the south. It's going to be really warm, but it's fueled by lots of really cold air in the troposphere. So it's got quite a cool core, and it's just going to sit on top of us for the mid part of the week. So it's going to bring some really, really nice conditions, inversion conditions, quite cold, and it's not hovering around too long either. So we're not going to get that crazy temperature inversion thaw kind of thing that we had in December, the second week of December. It's moving to sit back over Scandinavia quite quickly to bring some colder air back. So it's going to be really nice getting out Wednesday, Thursday, some really crisp days, potentially bluebird over the east coast, slightly windier and maybe some cloud on the west a bit more. And we've got a little front trying to squeeze its way through into Saturday. It might become occluded, but it'll just weaken as it gets onto land, as the dominating air mass is this eastern area of really cold air into the weekend. And these kind of trends are continuing, which is quite exciting. Just to go back a couple of steps, it's looking like the freezing level is going to go back down again around Wednesday. If you were to pick particular days this week, I'd probably line them up to Thursday, Friday. You could go out Monday, Tuesday, but the snow's not going to be very useful. There'll be quite a lot of loose rocks around. The turf might not be particularly frozen as well. So if you can pick one, I'd probably go later in the week. The further you leave it, the better it will be as well. And if you are just on the west coast, be aware that there's some potentially worse weather, not particularly bad by any means, but just like a front trying to squeeze its way through there towards the weekend, and that'll fizzle out a little bit more to the east coast. I've just got the icon here as well, just to show kind of similar idea. The wetter, warm air that we've got at the moment, kind of fizzling through towards Monday lunchtime as this higher pressure begins to develop, and then it moves just to the northeast of us to bring some cooler air towards the latter half of the week, and the arpege as well. Very similar idea. I think this has the high pressure building in slightly later. Here it is now, just coming for Wednesday evening into Thursday. There you are. So it's Wednesday, 6 o'clock, high pressure finally building in before moving a little bit to the northeast. This is again the icon, but this is the 2 meter temperatures. So we're well above freezing at the surface before the warmer air getting squished away by the westerly winds, and then the high pressure coming to build back over the northeast. And it's going to bring some very cold air on the back end of this. Just there. You'll hear some media lines buzzing the words beast from the east again. We've not quite got the conditions lined up for that at the moment. There is some very exciting stuff coming towards the middle half of February, though, where the kind of same conditions that did align for that are sort of happening. But I'm going to go into that in just a moment for a bit more detail. But it's looking very good over the short term. Getting out in the second half of the week is probably the better idea, especially on the east coast. There's going to be some nicer nicer weather. So for the freezing level, I'll just run through this one quickly. So here we've got the ill-defined, slightly warmer southwesterly winds coming for the next couple of days. There'll be local areas of phone effect getting the freezing level down quite a bit lower, and there can be some wet bulb instabilities as well. So you could potentially find some areas that have localized freezing levels significantly lower than what you're seeing here. And you can see this is Tuesday, we're about getting down to freezing level at higher summits, and then by Wednesday, freezing levels down to 3, 4, 500 meters, which is pretty good. And if I just bring you forward to Saturday, it should show the front coming through with some slightly warmer air on the occluded fronts here. So this is the front that could potentially hit the west coast on Saturday, and it just goes all mishmashy with the freezing levels, but it's still staying really cold. So what I mentioned about the stratospheric polar vortex is this area of really cold air mass sitting to the northwest of us is fueling the high pressure that's coming to sit on us, which is why it's a particularly colder area of high. So here you can see it's Wednesday, the minus 30 isotherm for the, it's very, very high in the atmosphere, but it's just showing that the high pressure is fueled by cooler air as it's coming to sit on top of us, rather than being fueled by southeasterly, southwesterly, warmer air, which can give those awful thaws that we've had too much this season. And then you can see it moves slightly further to the northeast as well. So what is happening later in the month is really exciting. There's the potential of the polar vortex to have significant warming. And now the word warming may ring some alarm bells, but it's actually quite a good thing because it allows an easterly flow to happen. I'm just going to try to explain that really quickly. So we've got the ECMWF for the 850 hectopascal. So this is just, again, showing the tropospheric polar vortex, the weather effects that are happening more locally to us. And you can see it's just sitting on the cusp of us, moving over and bringing us in the cooler side of it as the high pressure comes to sit on us here. So we're definitely on the cooler side of the tropospheric polar vortex there. And it's breaking, splitting into half, which is slightly confusing, and I can't really explain this in too much detail, which is why it's quite exciting. It's stuff that I don't know too much about with the high pressure sitting over to the northeast of us. So when we go into the stratosphere, so this is significantly higher than our weather. This is above the tropopause, and its temperature's way, way, way below freezing, and this isn't what affects us locally as weather. And you can see the darker the colours, the cooler it is, and the purple is a slightly warmer air. And what happens is, over the winter months, the North Pole obviously doesn't see as much sun, so the air above the troposphere cools significantly, and that combined with the gradient of the warmer air towards the equator and the combination of the Coriolis effect creates this westerly flow which dominates us for most of the winter. So the winds will come from the Atlantic across. And if I just run this forward for the month of February, you can see these cooler temperatures are becoming slightly warmer. It's getting slightly squished. So you see the whites have now disappeared as the stratospheric polar vortex is warming up. So if I skip to about a week from now, you could see this area of warmer air is kind of dancing its way and pushing out the cooler air of the stratospheric polar vortex away. And this is an indication of sudden stratospheric polar warming. And basically what that means is there's this less dominant westerly airflow across the United Kingdom, which can allow an easterly airflow to potentially take hold of our weather. And it's really coming through about the middle half of the month. You see this warming is happening incredibly quickly now. So you can see the difference from, this is the 17th of February, whereas if we go back to what we've got at the moment, we're into all of this white colour. So there's significantly warmer temperatures indicated for the middle to this last third of the month. And from a slightly larger anomaly point of view, so this is the weekly mean anomalies. So this is what we've got at the moment. So really cold air sitting in the stratosphere just to the north of the North Pole. If I go forward 1 week, you can see the really cold air still dominating, and then it warms significantly between the 17th and 24th of Feb. So this is an anomaly of extremely warm temperatures sitting over the North Pole in the stratosphere. And what that means is the westerly flows can't be sustained, and we are allowed to get an easterly flow just because of the weakening effect of that vortex, and that dominates for another part of the signal there for the latter half of the winter season. So this is something that's completely different, and it's changed quite a lot over the recent days. So just to show it in another way, here is the cool air and the really powerful stratospheric polar vortex bringing the westerly winds around the North Pole. And if I skip forward a week, so this is for tomorrow, if I skip forward to say Friday for next week, you can see it's starting to split as it's weakening from the slightly warmer conditions that is happening in the stratosphere. And if I skip forward again, you can see it's actually starting to break apart towards this is the 12th of February here, completely splitting entirely, and this would allow very, very confusing conditions, stuff that I have no idea how to predict to happen, but more dominant easterly flow to happen. So if we had these conditions constantly, we would not be so subject to Atlantic storms. We'd have a much cooler continental climate. So our climate is normally dominated by this really strong polar stratospheric vortex. But when it splits, our normal climate actually changes to a more continental Arctic air mass as the westerly winds aren't allowed to dominate, bringing warmer winds. And if I just bring this chart up here, you can see the zonal winds up in the stratosphere as well. So here is the really powerful, strong stratospheric polar vortex bringing the westerly winds high up in the stratosphere. And as we go towards the middle of the month, there's a few ensembles predicting a reversal of the stratospheric polar vortex, but a lot of them are just showing a significant weakening as it does increase in temperature quite a bit. And what that means basically is we are going into the latter half of February and into the early half of March, is we will be more subject to northeasterly colder air masses instead of the westerly flows that we've been having for quite a while now. So these kind of high pressure Scandinavian highs sitting and bringing colder air from the northeast, so potentially less stormy conditions, less major thaws, and just significantly colder temperatures. So icier conditions and basically a good outlook. But to round it off quickly, we've got some slightly warmer at the moment to bring a bit of a thaw. Freezing level coming back down on Wednesday with some high pressure building to bring some colder air to the weekend. A small front that might squeak its way through on Saturday, particularly to the west coast. But otherwise, some really good weather and hopefully some really good conditions to follow over the next few weeks as the northeasterly flow and colder air should start to dominate. But otherwise, thank you very much for listening.